By the end of my brother's wedding, the Carter family name was ruined. Their money was gone. Their reputation was shattered. And every secret they thought they'd hidden was suddenly front-page news in every corner of Newton, Massachusetts. And I was the one who walked out with every single dollar and every ounce of power they once held over me. My name is Madison Carter. I'm 32 years old. And I'm a finance director living just outside Boston. I spent my whole life being the dependable one, the fixer, the peacekeeper, the woman everyone expected would step up, smile, and smooth over every mess. I thought I understood betrayal. I thought I knew the rules of family. But I was wrong. What they didn't realize is that I'd spent years preparing for this exact moment. I had receipts for every dollar, every lie, every time I heard, "She's just the bank." Not really family. If you've ever been the one holding everything together while your family takes you for granted, if you've ever felt like you're nothing more than an obligation or a convenient solution to everyone else's problems, tell me where you're watching from. Seriously. I want to know because this is for every responsible daughter, every fixer, every person who's ever felt invisible inside their own family. Let me set the scene for you. I didn't come from old money. Not really. The Carter family looked rich on paper. The houses were perfect. The lawns manicured. The Christmas cards always picture perfect. We lived in Newton, a suburb where every driveway is lined with trees and every dinner party is a contest for who's more successful. My mother loved to play the role of the gracious hostess. My father built Carter LLC from nothing. Or at least that's how the story goes at every family reunion. And then there's my brother Tyler. He's 2 years younger. But you'd think he was the main character in the Carter family story. Private schools. A shiny black BMW for his 16th birthday. Ski trips every winter while I worked double shifts in a diner, just to keep up with my tuition payments at Boston University. Looking back, maybe all the warning signs were there from the start. But I wanted to believe that if I just kept working hard, if I just kept being useful, things would change. I'd get a seat at the table. I'd finally be seen as more than just the backup plan or the silent partner. That hope kept me going for years. But here's the thing, every family has patterns. In mine, I was always the responsible one. The scapegoat. The problem solver. Tyler was the golden child. My mother used to say, "Tyler needs more help. He's still figuring things out. Madison, you've always been so independent." Translation, Tyler gets the spotlight. I get the chores. All those sacrifices, they started early. I put myself through school. Tyler got private tutors, the newest phone, and a car before he could even drive. When my father died, it was me who sorted out the estate. When Carter LLC was on the edge of collapse, guess who stayed up all night? Poring over financial statements, renegotiating vendor contracts, making phone calls to save the company, you guessed it. But every time the family needed rescuing, it was always the same. Tyler got the credit. My mother played the victim, and I was expected to keep my head down and keep working. But that's just the surface, because behind every thank you, Madison was another favor asked, another sacrifice expected, another slap in the face disguised as a compliment. And as I'd soon find out, every one of those moments was just another link in the chain they planned to wrap around me, right up until the day I broke free. So let's go back before the wedding. Before the fallout. Before the headlines and the lawyers and the stares from neighbors who used to nod politely across their boxwood hedges, I want to show you how family sacrifice, when it's one-sided, turns into something far darker. Because sometimes the only way to break a cycle is to burn it down completely. It started early, long before I had words for it. As a kid, I was the helper, the one who made things work. If my mother forgot to sign a permission slip, I forged her signature and never told a soul. If Tyler forgot his homework, I'd find it in the laundry. Miraculously rescued just before the bus arrived. My parents told everyone I was mature for my age. All that really meant was I figured things out for myself, so they didn't have to. The truth is, I didn't resent it, not at first. In elementary school, I actually felt proud when my teachers would say, "Madison's so responsible." That pride turned into habit, and habit turned into obligation. By middle school, it was already routine for me to step in and smooth things over whenever Tyler messed up. One time he broke a neighbor's window playing baseball, and instead of coming clean, he hid in the garage. I went door to door, apologized, and offered to pay for the repairs with my babysitting money. I was 12 years old. Tyler got ice cream that night for handling the situation well. My parents never mentioned me. That pattern carried into high school. I worked weekends and summers waiting tables at a local diner, stacking shelves at the bookstore, running errands for our elderly neighbor. Every dollar I earned went straight to my college fund. Tyler got an allowance, a private math tutor, and when he turned 16, a brand new BMW. I remember sitting in the passenger seat the day he picked it up, watching him fumble with the controls, grinning like he'd won the lottery. My mother beamed. "He's growing up so fast." No one asked how I was getting to work that night. When it came time for college, my parents told me they'd love to help, but the family business was going through a rough patch. I filled out scholarship applications, juggled 2 part-time jobs, and spent countless late nights studying until my eyes burned. I remember the day my acceptance letter arrived from Boston University. I ran downstairs, waving it in the air, breathless with excitement. My mother barely glanced up from her phone. "That's nice. Madison, can you remind Tyler about his SAT tutor at 5? I stuck the letter on the fridge, right next to the list of groceries I was expected to pick up. Meanwhile, Tyler's journey was different. He went to private school, played varsity lacrosse, and switched majors 3 times. My parents threw him a graduation party that filled our entire backyard, catered with a live band, 70 guests, and enough gifts to start his own apartment. When I graduated with honors, after 4 years of nonstop work, my family took a picture for Facebook. No party, no band, just, "We're proud of you, Madison. Now, what's your plan for helping with the company?" By then, Carter LLC was already starting to unravel. My father's health was fading. Bills were stacking up. And Tyler's mistakes at the office were getting more expensive by the day. I was just out of college, working at an investment firm downtown, still paying off my student loans. But somehow every emergency landed in my lap. My mother would call at all hours. "Can you look over these numbers for me? Can you talk to the bank? Can you just fix it?" And every time, I did. Not because I wanted credit, but because I honestly thought it was what family was supposed to do. But looking back now, it's obvious what was really going on. Tyler wasn't being helped. He was being rescued, over and over, by a family that couldn't bear to see him fail. Every time he tanked a meeting or forgot to file taxes or ran up a credit card bill, I was expected to clean up the mess quietly, without complaint, and definitely without recognition. Once, he called me at midnight, frantic because he'd totaled his car and needed me to fix things with our insurance agent. I handled it. I always did. The financial sacrifices piled up. When my father died, the company was almost bankrupt. Vendors were calling. Creditors threatened lawsuits. And Tyler had no idea how to read a balance sheet. My mother phoned me in tears. Not to ask if I was okay, but to say, "Tyler is really struggling. Madison, You're so good at this stuff. Can you just step in for a bit? That bit turned into months. I worked 60-hour weeks at my day job, then stayed up late untangling the company's mess. Negotiated settlements, rewrote contracts, even signed my name as guarantor on a bridge loan. That loan was for $200,000. I paid off half of it with my own savings when Tyler missed payment after payment. And when things finally stabilized, my mother called a family meeting. Tyler needs to step up, she announced. He's ready to take over as CEO. Just like that. No acknowledgement. No thank you. Nothing. My name never made it onto the letterhead. My mother sent out a company-wide email introducing Tyler as the new leader. My only mention thanks to Madison for her support during this transition. But if you think that was my breaking point, you'd be wrong. I still believe deep down that if I just kept showing up, if I kept being useful, they'd finally see me. That, maybe. One day, my sacrifices would matter. Instead, what I got was more of the same. Tyler would call for money. My mother would ask me to smooth things over. And I'd always do it. I paid Tyler's credit card bill when he maxed it out again. I fronted him $10,000 for a business idea that went nowhere. I covered payroll for the company one winter when they missed a deadline, wiring $40,000 from my personal account. My mother sent a bouquet the next week with a card that read, "You're our rock." And that was it. So when the wedding came around, and my family started treating me less like a daughter and more like an ATM, it was almost expected. Still, I told myself one more time. One more sacrifice. Maybe this time, things would finally change. All those years of sacrifice made me believe that maybe, just maybe, things would be different this time. But even before the wedding, little things started to unravel the story I'd been telling myself. It began with the smallest details. I noticed that when Tyler and Kylie discussed wedding plans, I was only looped in for the big-ticket items, the venue deposit, the catering bill, the photographer's retainer. I paid $40,000 in deposits before I even saw an invitation. When I offered to help with the smaller details, decorations, vendor calls, even something as simple as arranging a brunch, Kylie would laugh and say, "Oh, Maddie, you work so much. Let us take care of it. You just be our guest of honor." But as the weeks passed, I realized I wasn't actually being included, I was being managed. One afternoon, I stopped by my mother's house to drop off some contracts for her signature. The kitchen table was covered in wedding brochures, sticky notes everywhere. But when I glanced at the seating chart, my name was missing. At first, I told myself it was just an oversight. But as I stood there, I heard laughter from the living room. My mother, Tyler, and Kylie. Voices low but unmistakable. I heard Kylie say, "Don't worry. After the merger, she'll be out of the picture anyway. Just keep her sweet until she signs." Something inside me froze. That wasn't a joke. That was a plan. I quietly backed out, my mind racing. I wanted to believe there was some explanation, that I was overreacting. But the pattern was too familiar, too sharp to ignore. Over the next few days, small hints kept stacking up. I noticed that my company email stopped receiving board meeting invites. Tyler's name suddenly appeared as primary contact on accounts I'd set up. And one morning, a longtime colleague of mine, Emily, who had agreed to help coordinate some logistics for the wedding, called me sounding uneasy. "Madison," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm not sure how to say this, but your name isn't on the guest list at the head table." I checked, thinking maybe it was a mistake. "But you're actually assigned to a table near the kitchen. It's the only one with staff names." At first, I laughed it off. It must be an error. There's no way. But even as I said it, my stomach churned. Emily hesitated. Madison, I also overheard Kylie and your mother talking yesterday. They said you're just the bank. And that once everything goes through, they'll have more control over the family trust. That did it. For years, I'd heard variations of those words, just the bank. Just the helper. Just the backup plan. But hearing it spoken so openly, so casually, right before the biggest day in our family's history, made it impossible to ignore. Still, part of me needed hard proof. So I started paying closer attention. I scrolled through old group chats and found threads where major decisions had been made: vacations, holidays, big announcements, and realized I'd only ever been added after plans were finalized. I checked financial records and saw recurring transfers to Tyler, often labeled as business expense reimbursements. When I tallied it up, I realized I'd sent over $200,000 to family accounts in the past 2 years, never once getting paid back. Then came the final confirmation. 3 days before the wedding, a folder appeared in my inbox from our family attorney, marked urgent sign before merger. Inside were new trust documents, board resolution drafts, and a series of emails between Tyler, Kylie, and my mother. The language was cold, clinical. Remove Madison from all board activities post-merger. Transfer voting rights to Tyler. Ensure Madison is acknowledged publicly for her support, but has no further access. The message was clear. My role was over as soon as I signed. They wanted my name, my signature, and my silence. Everything else disposable. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at my laptop screen long after midnight. The city lights of Boston glowed outside my window. A soft, indifferent hum in the distance. I thought about every time I'd picked up the phone, every time I'd written a check, every time I'd fixed someone else's mistake while being told, "You're just so reliable, Madison." I realized, finally, that reliability was never the reward. It was the trap. And this time, I wasn't walking into it blindly. Once you finally see the truth, you can't unsee it. For me, the real awakening didn't come from a single moment, but from a cascade of realizations, each one sharper than the last, each one echoing back to moments I had chosen to ignore for years. The day of the wedding arrived bright and warm. The kind of perfect September Saturday people dream about for their milestone events. Sunlight filtered through the trees as I pulled into the country club lot, the air filled with the sound of laughter and distant music. I parked my car ironically. The same make and model Tyler now drove, only his had been a gift. And mine I'd paid for myself. Every single penny. Walking through the entrance, I glanced at the crowd. Guests in crisp suits and pastel dresses swirled around the lobby, balancing glasses of champagne and plates piled high with hors d'oeuvres. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I belonged there, too. But then I saw the seating chart. My name, written in neat block letters, was listed on a table at the very back, right by the kitchen doors. I stood there for a beat, just absorbing it. Every single one of my relatives, every extended family member and close friend, was seated up front, surrounded by laughter and love. Me, I was set aside with the catering staff, invisible to everyone except the waiters bustling in and out, carrying trays stacked high with empty plates. There was something so deliberate about it, something unmistakable. This wasn't just an oversight or a thoughtless mistake. This was a message. I was being removed from the family's story, quietly and efficiently. Just as the merger paperwork had promised, Kylie, radiant in her lace dress, glided over with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. She didn't lower her voice as she told my mother, "She's just the bank. Let her eat with the staff." The words landed with a sting. But what really got me was the way my mother didn't even flinch. She simply adjusted her corsage and walked away. As the ceremony began, I sat alone at my table. The clatter of kitchen trays behind me, the scent of roasted chicken and wine swirling in the air. I watched Tyler laughing at the head table, basking in every ounce of attention. I caught flashes of my mother posing for photos, arm in arm with Kylie's parents. For a moment, I felt almost outside of myself, like I was watching someone else's life. A movie I didn't remember auditioning for. And then, the pattern became painfully clear. All those times I'd stepped in, helped out, saved the day I'd been cast as the invisible helper, the safety net. Never the daughter who belonged. It wasn't just a recent betrayal. It was a strategy. An unspoken plan that had shaped every year of my adult life. I thought about every time I'd been left out of a family photo, every group text that forgot to add me, every achievement brushed aside. But it was the silence that hit hardest. No one protested. No one spoke up. The room was full of people who had watched me sacrifice, year after year, and not a single one could spare a glance. In that moment, the humiliation and heartbreak gave way to something different, a kind of calm clarity. Suddenly, I was no longer the outsider trying to be accepted. I was the only person in that room who saw everything as it truly was. I could feel my heart beating in my chest, slow and steady, as if time itself was pausing to let me decide who I wanted to be next. I picked up my fork, took a breath, and made a quiet promise to myself. This was the last time I would ever let anyone write me out of my own story. I looked around, not at the beautiful decorations or the perfectly arranged flowers, but at the faces that had once meant everything to me. I realized I owed them nothing more. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. One I would write for myself. After all the years of picking up the pieces, I finally stopped waiting for someone to do the right thing. Sitting at that table behind the kitchen doors, I decided I would never beg for a seat at anyone else's table again. That kind of clarity isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, solid, like the weight of a lock clicking into place. So I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw my napkin or cry or demand answers. Instead, I reached for my phone and did what I do best: handled business. The first call I made was to my attorney. I kept my voice steady, my words measured. "It's time. Freeze all Carter family trust accounts. Effective immediately. Cancel every outstanding payment related to the wedding. And pull all documentation on the merger." My attorney didn't ask questions. We'd discussed this possibility before. He simply replied, "Understood. You'll have confirmation within the hour." Next, I texted my financial advisor. "Remove Carter LLC from the joint venture. Notify our partners that the deal is off. And prepare a statement in case there's pushback." I didn't hesitate. I'd worked too hard to build my professional reputation, and I was done letting anyone else risk it for their own gain. The third message was to my PR contact. "Get ready to release every receipt screenshots, emails, all evidence if they come after me. I want a complete timeline, with every Venmo payment, every wire transfer, every group chat where I was called just the bank. If they try to spin this story, they go public." With those 3 actions, everything shifted. My power wasn't in raising my voice. It was in the years of careful record-keeping, the legal groundwork, the quiet alliances I'd built with people who respected my value, even if my own family never did. The mood in the reception hall began to change almost immediately. Tyler's phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, his face draining of color. Kylie pulled him aside, her whisper sharp and urgent. My mother finally noticed something was off and started searching the crowd for me. But by then, I was already walking toward the exit. Head high, calm as ever. As I stepped outside, the late afternoon sun hit my face. I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. I slid into my car, closed the door, and sat for a moment, watching guests wander the patio, unaware that their whole world was about to change. On the drive home, my phone lit up with calls and texts. Tyler, of course, was the first. Madison. What's going on? Why can't I access my accounts? Is this some kind of mistake? I let it ring. Then came the group texts, my mother demanding I fix whatever I'd done. Kylie accusing me of ruining her special day. Even distant cousins chiming in to keep the peace. I answered none of them. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and sat at my kitchen table. Laptop open. Every piece of evidence laid out in front of me. For years, I'd collected it all: bank records, loan documents, text messages, even photos of my name erased from company materials. My lawyer confirmed that the trust freeze was complete. My financial advisor sent proof that the joint venture was dead. The company's credit lines began to close. Tyler's car, which I still legally owned, was scheduled for repossession, but I didn't post anything online. I didn't blast the family on social media, at least. Not yet. I was prepared to let the facts speak for themselves. If they tried to attack my reputation, I'd be ready. Every cent, every decision, every slight, they were all documented. For the first time in my life, I felt completely in control. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. Carter LLC's largest client had pulled out. My mother left voicemails pleading for a meeting. Kylie posted a cryptic message about betrayal in the family on Instagram, hoping for sympathy. But behind every dramatic outburst was a single reality: the money was gone. The safety net had snapped. And there was nothing they could do to cover it up. For so long, I'd thought of myself as the helper, the fixer, the silent partner. Now, I was something else entirely. I was the reckoning they never saw coming. In the days that followed, the consequences hit hard and fast. It's one thing to imagine what happens when you finally stand your ground, but witnessing the fallout is something else entirely. Carter LLC, the business my father had started from nothing, became the talk of every coffee shop and country club in Newton. Their biggest deal evaporated overnight. Vendors started calling, asking why payments bounced, why contracts were suddenly void. The merger that Tyler had bragged about for months collapsed, leaving the company with debts it could no longer hide. Tyler's life unraveled even faster than the business. He was so used to having instant access to money, to credit cards and a car he never paid for, that the reality of financial limits hit him like a brick wall. The repo company arrived on a Wednesday morning, right as the neighbors were heading to work. I imagine the look on his face as they towed away that shiny BMW, the same one I'd paid for. Title in my name. No more birthday bailouts. No more easy rides. Kylie tried to control the narrative, posting on social media about unexpected betrayal and how some people can't handle seeing others happy. But it didn't take long for the truth to surface. Screenshots of group chats started circulating, showing exactly who had been scheming and who had been left out. Every "just the bank" comment, every plan to cut me out after the merger, was out there for everyone to see. My mother's response was predictable. She called everyone she knew, from old friends to distant relatives, spinning a story about misunderstanding and family drama blown out of proportion. But emails tell their own story. When you have receipts for every transfer, every board meeting you were left out of, every decision made behind your back, you don't need to shout to be believed. You just need to let the facts breathe. Old colleagues of mine reached out, Some offered sympathy. Some shared stories of their own about families who never saw their worth until it was too late. Even business rivals sent quiet messages of respect, admitting they hadn't realized just how much I'd been holding everything together. Meanwhile, Tyler's world kept shrinking. Creditors started calling him directly. The family trust was frozen, so he couldn't pull cash to patch the holes. His phone calls became more desperate. He left voicemail late at night, first demanding, then pleading, finally just asking for one more chance. I didn't return a single call. Kylie, once the queen of curated Instagram posts, started deleting photos and turning off comments. The Carter family's social circle, built over decades of favors and appearances, grew cold and silent. People stopped inviting them to dinners, stopped answering their calls. Word gets around quickly in a town like Newton, and no one wants to be associated with a scandal. The most surreal moment came a week after the wedding. When my mother finally asked to meet in person, we sat across from each other at a coffee shop, her hands tight around a paper cup. She tried everything: blame, guilt, nostalgia. She talked about family, about forgiveness, about how we all make mistakes. She asked me to think about Tyler, about the company, about the Carter name. But this time, her words felt empty. I looked her in the eye and told her, quietly and calmly, that I was done. I had given everything I had, and I was choosing myself for the first time in my life. The aftermath was swift. Carter LLC was forced to sell off assets just to stay afloat. My mother, for the first time in decades, had to look for work. Tyler and Kylie moved out of their luxury apartment and into something much smaller. Their savings drained, their credit destroyed. The family, once so polished and proud, now avoided even the smallest social gatherings. And me, I never raised my voice, never posted a rant, never stooped to their level. I let the facts and the consequences do all the talking. For years, I'd worried that standing up for myself would make me look heartless, or selfish, or cold. But now, watching my family face the reality they had created, I finally understood what real strength looked like. Dignity doesn't come from being quiet or obedient or endlessly forgiving. It comes from knowing your worth, setting boundaries, and letting go of people who refuse to see you. By the end of that month, the Carter family was unrecognizable. All their borrowed shine, their borrowed power, their fake stories, it all faded. The only thing left standing was the truth, and the woman who had learned, at last, that her value was never up for negotiation. It's strange how quickly a new life can take root when you finally let go of old burdens. In the months after everything collapsed, I moved to New York City, a place where no one cared about the Carter family name. Only what you could build with your own hands. I rented a tiny apartment on the Upper West Side, decorated with secondhand furniture and sunlight. For the first time in my adult life, I woke up each morning with a feeling I hadn't recognized in years: peace. I threw myself into my work, not out of obligation, but out of excitement. The connections I made were different. I wasn't surrounded by people who needed me to rescue them. I found colleagues who respected my experience and friends who actually wanted to know me, not just what I could do for them. Slowly, the pieces of my life began to rearrange themselves, not into the family I'd always tried to fix, but into a community I got to choose. It didn't take long before my professional life blossomed in ways I'd never thought possible. I co-founded a tech startup with a team that valued my voice. And within 2 years, our company made the Forbes list. I established a scholarship for young women who had been scapegoated by their families, hoping to give someone else the kind of second chance I had to carve out for myself. For the first time, my success was truly my own, no strings attached. No silent sacrifices expected. Meanwhile, the Carters faded from my daily thoughts. My mother, once the queen of Newton's social scene, was now working retail at a department store downtown. Tyler and Kylie, stripped of their easy wealth, ended up in a two-bedroom apartment. Their days marked more by struggle than by show. The invitations stopped coming. The calls grew rare. And eventually, the family that had once felt like my entire world became just another story in my past. But here's the thing, they weren't villains in a fairy tale. They were just people who never learned how to see someone else's worth unless it benefited them. For a long time, that used to break my heart. Now, it just feels like a lesson I had to learn the hard way. If you're listening to this and you've ever been the fixer, the silent supporter, the one who stayed up late patching holes in someone else's life, let me tell you, choosing yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the bravest, kindest thing you'll ever do. Because at the end of the day, you get to decide who deserves a seat at your table. So I'll leave you with this. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you? Have you ever drawn a line and realized you'd found yourself on the right side of it? Even if you were standing alone, if you have, I hope you'll share your story in the comments. I want to know where you're watching from and what strength looks like in your life. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe. There are more stories coming about what it means to choose yourself, to build your own legacy, and to let go of anything that makes you feel small. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that real family isn't always the one you're born with. Sometimes, it's the one you find along the way.